Well, with the offseason officially here for the Edmonton Oilers, it's time to take a look at some offseason acquisition options for the Oilers, especially in between the pipes. Plus, we start our player grades. Just how well did Connor McDavid do? Plus, the return of the prospect of the week. And let's be real, I think we all know who it is. All that and more on today's episode of Locked On Oilers.
You're Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Oilers podcast. I'm your host and former Oilers game day producer, Brett Holden. Thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you find your podcast. Plus, we're on YouTube as well. So if you aren't on YouTube and haven't subscribed, go press the subscribe button. Trust me, it's easy. And you get every notification once we have a new episode. On today's episode, like we mentioned, there are so many options in between the pipes and in the crease for the Edmonton Oilers, because let's all be real, Mikko Koskinen and probably Mike Smith both aren't going to be back for the Oilers next year. So what will the Oilers do between the pipes? Well, we got some options for you, and we'll talk through them. Plus, it's the end of the season, so it's time to go through our player grades. And today, we start with Connor McDavid. So we're starting off pretty positive. Let's be real. Who else were we going to start with? Plus, again, like we said, the prospect of the week is having one hell of a finals series in the QMJHL. We will get into that all on today's episode of Locked On Oilers, but let's get started with the goaltending. It's one of the first things that are on Oilers fans' minds as what are the Oilers going to do in between the pipes? Mike Smith is going to be gone. Realistically, a lot of people would come out and say that the goaltending was probably the reason why the Oilers lost that series against Colorado. A lot of times you would go into the game or in that series, and the Oilers would be playing pretty well, and then you get the JT Compher goal where you're like, if we only had a competent goaltender who respected shooting angles, maybe we'd still be in this game. But, I mean, I was a Mike Smith fan, even though I'm talking crap about him. I liked Mike Smith, so I'm not going to crap talk him too much, because that's the goaltender that you get. That was the goaltender that the Edmonton Oilers built their team around. You have to realize that the goaltender of Mike Smith is not necessarily the guy that you're getting in Mike Smith isn't necessarily the guy who's stopping the pucks and being the best inside the crease. What you're getting is a puck mover who, like a lot of people have said, puts years on players' careers because they don't have to go and get hit in the corner. Because then when the other team's going for the line change, you can get the puck up quick to the fastest, best player in the world in Connor McDavid. It's pretty decent if you ask me. You saw it in the game-winning goal against San Jose where he basically curled it all the way up to Connor McDavid for the breakaway for the goal. And that was what you got out of Mike Smith. It wasn't the saves. It wasn't the, oh my goodness, this goalie is so good. You're getting a guy who could move the puck and basically become a sixth player on the ice and could also cover the puck with his hands. So that's what you got with Mike Smith. Now, that wasn't really exactly how the Oilers were going to win, was it? So, who can the Oilers bring in? Sometimes it feels bleak. I'll be honest with you. It feels bleak when you take a look at all the options that the Edmonton Oilers might have to bring in, depending on the salary cap, depending on who signs, who doesn't re-sign. This is a very important offseason for the Oilers. A lot of people, including myself, thought that last year was going to be the most important offseason for the Oilers in their basic history. Not so much anymore. It's going to have to be this one. You found a guy in Evander Kane who can play next to Connor McDavid. That's not easy. We've tried with so many different players. Hi, Tyrati. Hi, Dominic Cahoon. Hi, basically anybody who's on the third line for the Oilers now. But you finally got him. Evander Kane is that guy. But do the Oilers have the money? That's I mean, again, that is not where we're going today. We won't talk about Evander Kane and some potential replacements for him just in case. That's not what we're talking today. We're talking about the goaltending. But again, it can't be overstated that this offseason is important for the Oilers. So who's available? Who is available? There's tons of ways you can get goaltenders in this offseason. And I'll be honest, before I really got looking at some options, I'm there can't be a lot of options for the Oilers, can there be? Well, I'm taking a look at 8 UFAs and 14 trade targets here. So there's an upwards of 22 potential targets for the Edmonton Oilers to take a look at this offseason. So let's take a look at some of the names here. I'm going to ring off a couple of the names, kind of talk about them, and then I kind of want your opinion as well. Do you think this goaltender will be good? Do you think this goaltender will not necessarily be good? Do you think you could see them in an Oilers uniform and actually have success? Plus, I want to see some more suggestions from you if you don't hear your number one goaltending suggestion for the Oilers here. So, we will start with the UFAs, and this guy is somebody, and again, I want to preface these with these may not necessarily be in the Oilers' price range at the moment, but they may be able to make it work. They may be able to make a trade to make these players work. So these are just options, and then you can build and we can build around them together later. Also, what we will do, hopefully, down this off season before the Oilers make a goaltending trade or change, I guess, we will be meeting up with some of the other Locked On hosts to chat about some potential trade offers and stuff like that, especially when it comes to these goaltenders. But I left you hanging on the first goaltender in the UFAs, a free agent that I thought the Oilers might have been pushing for in or at the trade deadline, and a goaltender as well that was the Oilers might have been pushing for as well in the offseason. That's Marc-Andre Fleury. I love Marc-Andre Fleury. If you don't love Marc-Andre Fleury, you're part of the problem in hockey. No, I'm just kidding. But Marc-Andre Fleury, just a fantastic goaltender, historical goaltender, a guy that can take Stuart Skinner under his wing. He doesn't have to play every single game in the season, but once he does play in the goal, you know what you're going to get. He's a fantastic goaltender, Vezina Trophy winner, Stanley Cup winner, one of the best in the generation. That doesn't exactly seem like a bad replacement for Mike Smith and a bad mentor for Stuart Skinner. The second guy for the Edmonton Oilers, I don't really want to say it. I don't really like it as an option, but I'm going to say Jack Campbell. If you take a look at Jack Campbell's numbers, it's weirdly positive, and you kind of like the numbers on the surface, but then you take a watch at Jack Campbell, and sometimes you're like, man, I just don't know. Sometimes you watch him and he's like, man, that's James Reimer 2.0. But hey, maybe James Reimer isn't a bad option either. We'll take a look at that too. Braden Holtby is also a free agent. We're taking kind of another older age name or another older guy who can come in and kind of just help Stuart Skinner learn the ropes. He's won a Vezina, has won a Stanley Cup. Almost a local boy from just outside of Lloydminster, Saskatchewan, I guess, because it's both in Alberta and Saskatchewan, but a nice name, a guy who I don't think would exactly mind taking a little bit of a pay cut to come home. The other guy, hey, we just saw him in the last series, well, only for a game or so, or half a game, really, and that's Darcy Kemper. His contract is up at the end of the year, so is that a guy that the Oilers should be taking a look at as well? Ville Husso, another guy who might have a contract coming up at the end of the season. Another guy that the Oilers can also trade for his rights as well. A little bit of a crease battle in St. Louis as well. Might as well make it easy for St. Louis and just go, hey, go Binnington. We'll take this kid. Martin Jones as well, up on his contract in Philadelphia. I like Martin Jones. I've always liked Martin Jones since the San Jose days. I think that would be a pretty interesting ad for the Edmonton Oilers. Another guy who has played all around the league and a guy who could help. He's a strong goaltender, especially when he needs to be, and especially when he has the rest, when he's not constantly going and going and going. Could benefit him splitting the time with Stuart Skinner. Another guy who split a lot of time in his day is Casey DeSmith between him and Tristan Jarry. And as well, Matt Murray was there with Casey DeSmith and Tristan Jarry as well when they had like the three-headed monster going. So I think Casey DeSmith, he's already 30 years old, which I was surprised about reading his statistics and his bio there. But I think another goaltender that could really help the Edmonton Oilers. And the final UFA for the Edmonton Oilers in the goaltending, in the crease, I should say, is Scott Wedgwood. Bounced around a couple teams this year, went from New Jersey to Arizona to Dallas was his last stop. And you know what? I've always liked Scott Wedgwood, was very strong at times this season, played on a very good Dallas Stars team down the stretch. So not too bad. And I don't think many of those guys will be too expensive. They can fit under the cap for the Edmonton Oilers, especially considering who they might have to sign. We will move into the trade targets in just a second, but first, I want to talk to you about our partner whose product I use literally every day. And I started using their product every day because I wanted something that really optimized my gut health, my immune system, and as well a supplement that actually tasted good. I don't want to take all those pills all the time and just keep putting them back and drinking water, and it's just too much. But that is exactly what I get with our partners at Athletic Greens. So what is this stuff? One delicious scoop of AG1 and you are absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. To help start your day right, this special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, your recovery, your focus, your aging, all of the things. All of the things. I've got my parents on it as well, and they keep messaging me going, thank you for getting us on it, because I use it every day and they use it every day. They are huge health nuts, weirdly enough. It is also lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy free, or gluten-free, they've got it for you. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, or artificial anything, all while still tasting great. It costs less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. I'm looking at you in my coffee cup. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 five-star reviews, and it's recommended by professional athletes. Well, I mean, you're watching a sports podcast and listening to a sports podcast. What could be better? Right now, it is time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That is it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Yes, trade targets for the Edmonton Oilers. There are a couple. I'm looking at it, and there's about 14 that the Edmonton Oilers can maybe take a look at and take a splash at as well. Again, we'll get to that in just a second, but we have an important favor to ask of you. We put together a survey so we can learn more about our listeners and make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcasts. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now and get started. It won't take very long, and everyone that takes the survey gets entered to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. Not bad. So you can go and see your favorite team after watching a Locked On or listening to a Locked On podcast with that Locked On with that Ticketmaster gift card. To take your audience survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Thank you so much for your help. Excuse me. Alrighty. Let's move into the trade targets here. Because again, there's a long list. There's 14 of them, baby, I'll be honest, it didn't seem like there was going to be too much of a trade market for goaltenders. I mean, you're not really going to willingly help out another team, especially if you know what their weakness is. And for the Oilers, you know it's their goaltending. And you don't want to help the team who has the best player in the world in Connor McDavid. So it's going to be kind of tough. But you take a look at some of the trade targets, the trade market, you take a look at the teams and where they're at, and you may be able to pick a couple good players out. So let's go through the 14 that I have here. And I had to cut this down. I had to go through about maybe 50, 70. How many was it? I guess it was almost 74 goaltender stats just to be like, okay, this guy's realistic. Okay, this guy's not realistic. So the first trade target for the Edmonton Oilers I have here is Linus Ullmark. I think we bring back another Linus Mark. Shout out Linus Ullmark. I love that man. As soon as he did his spinorama goal, I asked for it. Anyways, we're not talking about Ullmark. We're talking about Ullmark. He had a very solid season in Boston. Has had a very solid career outside of Boston, in Buffalo as well. He always had those famous minion masks in Buffalo. So I've always liked Linus Ullmark. I think he can be a strong goaltender, and especially with the guy, let's be real. Whoever the Oilers bring in is going to be splitting time with Stuart Skinner. So why don't you bring in a guy, and you should be bringing in a guy who's okay with a lighter workload. Linus Ullmark has never been the guy wherever he went. And Linus Ullmark, I don't think, will be the guy in Edmonton. He's not the guy in Boston. Jeremy Swayman is. But it's not like he's not still a fantastic goaltender. Linus Ullmark, I think, would be a great call for the Edmonton Oilers. Hey, how about this name? Carey Price. Yeah. A couple times I've heard the Edmonton Oilers, not only over the past few years, but since the Stanley Cup run for Carey Price, and since he got hurt and kind of took this year off, I've kind of heard his name pop up a couple times. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Edmonton Oilers and Carey Price, and you hear those two in the same sentence a couple times this offseason. Maybe we'll talk to somebody as well with a little bit of insight as well on this trade, or on a potential trade. So Carey Price, I think, is another option for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, here's one that I was trying to debate between who on this team in Carolina, but let's be real, Frederik Andersen is going nowhere. He was a fantastic goalie this year. So with Peter Kochetkov coming up for the Carolina Hurricanes, it seems like Antti Ranta's time might be coming up, I guess, in Carolina. So why not take a snag? How about that? I like Antti Ranta, always liked Antti Ranta, and I think he would be a great fit in Edmonton and a great guy for not only for Stuart Skinner as well, but if Stuart Skinner is struggling, you can throw in Antti Ranta and be very comfortable and confident that he's going to make the save for you. Next in Columbus is Joonas Korpisalo. I was trying to figure out between him and Elvis because I think Elvis would be the better goaltender. Unfortunately, when you take a look at Joonas Korpisalo's stats, at the bottom of the league, but that Columbus team wasn't too fantastic this year. You take a look at Elvis Merzlikin's numbers, and they're kind of comparable. So I think you could get Korpisalo for a good cost, a good price for the Oilers, and would be somebody that would be stable behind Stuart Skinner. Next, how about this name, Oilers fans? This name was actually proposed to me from Seth at Locked On Wild. How about this name? How about a little Cam Talbot action, huh? Want some Cam Talbot, Edmonton? I do. I'd take a little Cam Talbot. He's familiar with the system. He's familiar with the organization, familiar with the city. The guy says he loves Edmonton still. Why not bring him back? He was basically the Minnesota Wild's guy going into the playoffs. Had a little bit of it in the playoffs as well, but who didn't on the Minnesota Wild? Because I think they switched goalies like twice in that series. So, I mean, it's not like he doesn't have experience with the team, it's not like he doesn't have experience with the city as well. So, eh? How about that? A couple more names to pop off here. We got Semyon Varlamov. We're going to New York here. Semyon Varlamov. I mean, let's be real. Ilya Sorokin is the future of the island there. Varlamov is a little bit of a price point for the Edmonton Oilers, but if you could work out a deal to kind of keep some cap space, that'd be a fantastic ad. It'd really shore up your crease, make you a much better team. Plus, it seemed like the Edmonton Oilers were trying to get Semyon Varlamov at the trade deadline as well this year, so I'm not saying. I'm just saying. We're going to one more New York name, and then we're going to go into one quick ad read, and then we're going to come back into this list, and then we'll round off the episode with the Connor McDavid, I guess, grade for the season and the prospect of the week. And that name is Alexander Georgiev. Yeah, the guy who's behind Igor. Not a bad guy to watch this season for Alexander Georgiev. I know, again, another guy whose save percentage wasn't too high this year. Didn't have a very strong year, but you know what Alexander Georgiev can bring it. He's a great goaltender, fantastic goaltender. So I think he would be a great ad for the Edmonton Oilers. The next name we will get into, the last name from the Eastern Conference, and then we get into some names as well from the Western Conference. We will get into those in just a second, but first, I want to tell you about our partners over at Built. Don't you just love a chewy, chocolatey brownie? What about a caramel brownie with caramel swirled on top? Oh my goodness, so good. I'm getting caught in the moment. What if I told you that you can have all that chewy, chocolatey, good deliciousness plus 17 grams of protein? Yeah, you're in luck because caramel brownie bars are available right now at built.com. But you got to act fast because they are a fan favorite. Forget about dessert. These are better than dessert. Plus, the macros are unreal. 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, and only 4 grams of sugar. I would replace a regular brownie with these Built Caramel brownie bars in a heartbeat. There's a million reasons that you should try Built bars, but for now, let's just say that caramel brownie will rock your world, and that is not an understatement. I'm being honest. It will. With Built, tasty is the new healthy. They will make it tasty first, and then they'll worry about being healthy afterwards. To get the new chocolatey brownie bar, just head to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15. That is 15 to get 15% off your next order. That is LOCKED15, 15 to get 15% off your next order at built.com. Alrighty, let's hammer out the end of these goaltender names because truly, man, I got to be honest with you, I didn't think the Oilers had this many options, but they do. So we're going to rattle off about 6 more names, and we're going to move on again, like I said, to Connor McDavid's season player grade. Let's be real, we all know what it is, and the prospect of the week. Also, a guy I think everybody knows who it is, but. Next is Ilya Samsonov or Vitek Vanacek. Basically, take your pick between the two in Washington. Pretty good pairing. I mean, they both have very similar numbers. They both played basically similar amount of games, and they both looked pretty good. I mean, it's a pretty good issue to have in Washington right now. Alrighty. Let's move to the Western Conference teams because you kind of take a look at some names, and you're like, nah. That team's never going to trade that player to you, and you realize why. So we only have a couple names on here for this, and the first one is a divisional rival, I guess, a divisional team, and that's from the Anaheim Ducks. John Gibson, anybody? Let's be real. The Anaheim Ducks are going through a massive rebuild right now. Well, not a massive rebuild, but they are going through a rebuild. John Gibson's getting older in age. He's not getting any younger. I don't think he wants to be a part of a long-term solution here. The Edmonton Oilers are right there. John Gibson can really push the Oilers to the next level. And I think the Edmonton Oilers can really swing something in the current state of the Anaheim Ducks. So, why not? James Reimer is the next name that I was going to say. I mentioned James Reimer a little earlier when I mentioned Jack Campbell, but you take a look at James Reimer's numbers for the team that he played for, they're pretty impressive. They are very impressive, honestly. I wouldn't hesitate to take a look over at San Jose or take a look at James Reimer in general, wherever he may end up. Just go, hey, want to take a look over in Edmonton? I think he would be a great fit in Edmonton too. Great personality, great player. I think James Reimer would be great. The next two, we got three more, and the next two are from the same team. One of the goaltenders out of Seattle. Take your pick, either Philip Grubauer or Chris Dredger. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big Chris Dredger guy, but he had a pretty decent world championships at over in Finland over this past off season, and it's not really an easy circumstance to come into an expansion team and have so many people expect you to be the guy, the first guy, really. So, I mean, again, take your pick out of those two. Really like them both, or well, I didn't, not so much Dredger. I like Grubauer a lot, but again, if if the Oilers swung a trade for Chris Dredger, I'm not going to argue. And the final name, and I think I'm leaving the most interesting name to the end here. How about Connor Hellebuck? Another team who's going through not necessarily the best of times, probably a little bit of a rebuild. So Connor Hellebuck didn't exactly either have the strongest season either. A lot of people, I don't want to say rightfully or wrongfully, blamed Connor Hellebuck for the season that the Winnipeg Jets did have, but he didn't exactly help in a difficult situation. But that's where we will leave it there. Those are some of the targets, 22 of them, I guess, for the Edmonton Oilers. Let me know about some of the names that you think are on them. Let me know if you think they're realistic, and let me know if there's any names that you want the Oilers to take a look at as well. We are going to power through the rest of this episode as we have two more quick segments here. The first one being our first Edmonton Oilers grade as well. Let's be realistic. Connor McDavid was the best player in the NHL this year, and that is no understatement. He had 123 points. That's first in the league. 44 goals, good for seventh. So the guy got first in the league in points and was seventh in goals. Not too bad. Assists, 79 assists for the kid this year. 20, or it's good for second in the league for that. 1.54 points per game. That is first in the league. I mean, you can just keep reading off these stats. He is in at least the top 10 of all of them, except for power play goals. He's 31st when it comes to power play goals, only 10 this season. So, everybody calling him a power play merchant, I'm sick of it. Well, to be fair, he did have 44 power play points, but that is only a chunk of the points that he did get. But Connor McDavid, the stuff that he does on the ice, I mean, if you watch anything of the playoffs, the kid is fantastic. The kid is beyond. Like we said with the guys at the Avalanche, with Jess, with the Flames, with Sarah over at the Kings. Connor McDavid's just an alien. And the stuff that the guy can do is just nasty, just rude, just the stuff you can't even imagine sometimes. You watch it and go, I never knew you could do those on skates. Never knew it. This past season, he had the third most amount of points by a player at all. Third most amount of points by a player since 2000, 2001, only behind Nikita Kucherov, who scored 128 in 2018, 2019. Holy, there we go. That's what I was trying to say. 128 points in 2018, 2019 for Nikita Kucherov. And Joe Thornton. Remember when Joe Thornton was fantastic? He had 125 points in 2005, 2006, plus Connor McDavid played 2 less games than Nikita Kucherov did in 2019 or 2018, 2019. I keep wanting to go with those 1980s years because let's be real, in the playoffs, Connor McDavid kept breaking records that were made in the 1900s. He played 2 less games than Nikita Kucherov in 2018, 2019, and 1 less game than Joe Thornton in 2005, 2006. That was the year that he also got traded. So probably makes sense. But Connor only finished a couple points behind the two of them. So Connor's really kind of just entering his prime. So that's a little scary. Plus, we'd be remiss not to mention the playoffs. 33 points in the playoffs for Connor McDavid. That was good enough for first a long while, so the playoffs are still going on. But as of right now, he's still in first for points. 10 goals for Connor McDavid, good enough for fourth. 23 assists, second to only Leon Draisaitl. Pretty decent. 2 power play goals for the kid and 1 game winner. I'm going to credit him with 2 because let's be real, that second goal against the LA Kings that really put them away was the one that really put them away. The Oilers won the game from there, and Connor McDavid was Connor McDavid. In the playoffs, the third highest playoff point total since 1995, 1996. He is tied for the third highest. He is actually, he's fourth highest. Evgeny Malkin in 2008, 2009 had 36. Nikita Kucherov and Joe Sakic had 34 in 2019. 2018, 2019, Nikita Kucherov had the 34 points, and Joe Sakic, 34 points in 1995, 1996. So, this hasn't exactly been done for a while. And Connor McDavid is doing it in his fourth, I guess, appearance in the playoffs. Let's be real. It's kind of the second because the last 2 were in the COVID years. So now you get the real teams. Now you get the real playoffs. And Connor McDavid is excelling. Plus, in the playoffs, a 9-game point streak. How many? 9. And in all of them, he had multi-points. So, not bad. 33 points in the playoffs. That is insane. Connor McDavid, you get an A+. You know what? You get an A++ because nobody else is going to be any better. A++ for Connor McDavid in the 2021-2022 season. That is our first player grade of the season. We will continue on through the entire roster for the entire offseason. So you're going to keep hearing about players that you didn't think you'd hear about again. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Devon Shore. No, I'm kidding. I love Devon Shore. I'm looking at you, Brendan Perlini. I love Perlini too. I'm sorry. But yes, we will go through all of them this season. And anybody who stepped out onto the ice for the Edmonton Oilers at any point this season, even if it was for 3 minutes, Dmitry Samorukov. But either way, we will go through, like I said, these players again. But let's move on with our final segment of today, and that is the prospect of the week. As our prospect of the week has been tearing it up in the QMJHL playoffs and the QMJHL finals over the past week, and that is Xavier Bourgault. Oh my, him and his Shawinigan Cataracts are up 3-0 on the Charlottetown Islanders. If you haven't been able, if you haven't been able to watch the QMJHL finals at all, they are on TSN. So you can watch them on there. Plus, you can also watch the Edmonton Oil Kings, who are up 3-1 in their series, go for the Ed Chenoweth final on Saturday in Edmonton. But that's not what we're talking about here. We are talking about Xavier Bourgault in 3 games played. 5 goals, 2 assists, 7 points. 2 of those 5 goals have been game winners. He has won 2 of the 3 games for the Shawinigan Cataracts so far in the QMJHL final, plus a shooting percentage of almost 30%, 29.4% for Xavier Bourgault. What a season for Bourgault. What a playoff for Bourgault. And it's not even over yet. If he wins the QMJHL final, moves on to the Memorial Cup, and is on an even bigger stage. So we get to see more of Xavier Bourgault, and that is where we are going to call it today. Another long one. Seems like the offseason will be full of long ones here. Thank you so much for making Locked On Oilers your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you find your podcast. Now for your second listen, make sure you tune in to Locked On NHL. Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. It is free and available wherever you find your podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with another player report card, and we're going to take a look at another position that the Edmonton Oilers need to get better at. Who do they need to sign? Who will they trade for? All that and much more on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Oilers. But for today, thank you so much for tuning in, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.